Hi folks, I thought I'd do another video on the subject of Jehovah's Witnesses, and this video deals specifically with the generation of 1914 doctrine that is, well, it was very important to Jehovah's Witnesses, but doesn't seem so much now really. And I just want to explain just briefly, its changes, but there's not really a great deal of depth I can go into in this video, so I'd refer you to this article here on jwfacts.com, which has got lots of really fantastic information. It's got scans of Watchtower literature, charts, references. It's very comprehensive indeed. And how the doctrine has changed over the years, how its definition has changed, the definition of generation, and who it applied to as well has changed over the years. You can see all of that in this article. I'll put a link in the description there of this video. And also how it was interlinked as well with the 1975 prediction that the Watchtower had. So yeah, it's very interesting indeed. But yeah, it's vast, and it's actually quite good to read. It's very readable. They put it out in a very orderly fashion. They've managed to sort of grapple with exactly what the Watchtower has been teaching over the years, which is very mind-bending. This must have really given the person who put this together a headache. They've certainly put a lot of time into it, but they make it very clear the changes and the way it's all evolved over the years. It's very interesting. But for my humble video, I've got a few books and a few charts that I've put together myself, and some magazines of the Watchtower. And this is very interesting. This book was published in the 1980s by the Watchtower Society. You Can Live Forever on Paradise Earth. I used to see the witnesses out and about with this all the time when I was a young Christian. That are always pushing this book. Page 154, it says, after drawing attention to the many things that have marked the period from 1914 onward, Jesus said this generation will by no means pass away until all these things, including the end of this system, occur. Matthew 24:34-14. Which generation did Jesus mean? He meant the generation of people who were living in 1914. Those persons yet remaining of that generation are now very old. However, some of them will still be alive to see the end of this wicked system. So of this we can be certain. Shortly now there will be a sudden end to all wickedness and wicked people at Armageddon. Very clear. The person reading this book would have no doubt in their mind that people living during the time this book was written will see Armageddon. Now, it's quite interesting, this chart here that they've got of this man, detailing his life from baby to an old man. The very fact that they've included him as a baby is interesting, because previous to this they used to say that the generation that saw the event of 1914 would not include babies, but rather those who saw 1914 and could understand it with comprehension. Adults who were able to see the sign, not babies who have no comprehension. But of course, as the march of time goes on, and time is often the worst enemy of a false prophet, they've had to include babies as well. But the quote here says, Armageddon, some of the generation living in 1914 will see the end of the system of things and survive it. Again, very, very clear to the person reading this, whether the Jehovah's Witness themselves or the householder that they're doing the study with. People would definitely interpret this as a generation being the lifetime of a person. And as they've said here, even themselves, a lot of this generation now are extremely old, and this was in the early 1980s. And most, if not all, of those people are dead now. Another representative quote, again, a book from the 1980s, Reasoning from the Scriptures, which was the Apologetic book of the Jehovah's Witnesses back in the day, still used today by some witnesses. says on page 97, as shown under the heading Last Days, those events have been clearly in evidence since 1914. Before the last members of the generation that was alive in 19 will have passed off the scene, all the things foretold will occur, including the Great Tribulation, in which the present wicked world will end. Again, very clear to the reader. Now, this is quite interesting, this. The Awake magazine, very early one, and a more recent one. In the introductory page here, it says why Awake is published. This is what it originally said. Second paragraph. Most importantly, this magazine builds confidence in the Creator's promise of a peaceful and secure new order before the generation that saw the events of 1914 passes away. Very clear. Now, modern editions of Awake read this way. It says, Awake. The journal is published for this reason. Again, near the end. Reads almost exactly the same, except all references to the 1914 generation have been dropped totally. Most important, this magazine builds confidence in the Creator's promise of a peaceful and secure new world that is about to replace the present wicked, lawless system of things. So the Creator's promise, God's promise, has changed totally. All references to 1914 have been dropped. And now it is simply the peaceful and secure new world that is about to replace the present wicked, lawless system of things. So it makes it very open-ended. There's no real sort of cut-off point there. Now, what they've done as well has changed the introduction to the Awake magazine. Is they come up with this very mind-bending concept here of trying to extend more time for the generation. Now, this is just a diagram I've put together myself. But what they say now is that the 1914 generation, and it's of the anointed class, it's changed. As I said, that article in JW Facts, it shows you the changes. It used to be wicked people in general, the wicked world in general, the 1914 generation. But that's changed a few times, the definition of who it applies to. But now it is apparently the anointed. If I understand it correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but that's how I'm understanding it. But they're saying that the 1914 generation of the anointed are actually joined now by this overlapping generation of younger people that were born after them, but because they were contemporaries with the original 1914 generation, they now form part of the 1914 generation. So this generation goes on. Now, this is clearly two generations, not one. Now, by any definition of the word generation, people understand it to be the lifetime of a person, the lifetime of a group of people who are like of the same age, roughly the same age, not two generations becoming one as they currently have now. So it's absolutely mind-bending. And my prediction as well, I'm going to make a little prediction. The Watchtower have made enough predictions. So here's my little prediction. I think this is going to change again. And I think all reference to the 1914 generation will be totally dropped. And it'll be forgotten about and buried. And up-and-coming new Jehovah's Witnesses, maybe totally unaware of it, as totally unaware as what they are of, say, 1925, how important that was, or 1874, or 1918, or 1799. These old predictions, which have no relevance anymore to modern Jehovah's Witnesses. I think that's what they're going to do with this. It'll be very interesting to see how it develops, but clearly a false prophecy. They've just tried to stretch it and give themselves more time. Enough to give you a headache, very mind-bending, but I would highly recommend that article in jwfacts.com. As I say, I put the link in the description of the video, and I will say goodbye for now, folks. Take care and God bless.